Hi, welcome to KiwaniTalk. We're a public information show put together by people from the Dearborn Kiwanis Club with help from some of the students, faculty at Dearborn High. My name is Gary Gardner. Welcome to the program, which is the longest running cable interview show on the entire planet. We've been doing this for 28 years, and today we are excited to have a conductor. And not a train guy, but a music conductor, and very happy. You've never heard that before, have you?
No.
Okay. We have Stephen Jarvi, who is the music director for the Dearborn Symphony. Steve, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you. And my musical talent is limited to very bad shower singing. I took piano when I was a kid. Anybody who can take an inanimate object and make it musical, make something of beauty out of that, I have high esteem for. So
well,
that's
thank
really
you
great.
very much. And you know, I have to mention your conductor bit. My wife, when she first met me, we went on a blind date. That's how we first met. Those don't always work out, but I married this one. So, in our first date, I said, you know, oh, I'm a conductor, and she said, I love trains.
Okay, there you go.
I said, not this kind.
This
kind.
There you go. So it's a whole different thing. But you had to start someplace.
Yep.
What was the first inkling you thought you had towards music?
When I was a little kid, I loved to, you know, I was singing in the bathtub and those kind of things, and my grandparents had a Story and Clark piano. Story and Clark was actually based, the piano factory was actually based in Grand Haven, Michigan in the early part of the 20th century. So I would crawl up to this piano and just make little improvisations. There's pictures of me at like 2.5. I think I forced my great-grandmother to sit down when I was like 4 or something and said, you know, I have a birthday song for you. And of course, I couldn't even read music at that point. It was nonsense. But the love of the piano really brought me to music first, and then it's just kind of been with me throughout my entire life. I do play the saxophone, and I played that in the Michigan Marching Band, and I play a couple other instruments poorly, but pretty much it's just currently in our whole household, it's just me playing songs from Frozen 2 because I have a 6- and a 4-year-old.
Well, that's a great treat for them because I'm sure they love it. So, piano lessons. Piano is kind of a hard thing to move around, and you play saxophone. That's more mobile. Were you in a band, marching band, or?
Yep. I was in my high school's marching band, Grand Haven, Michigan, and I was in the Michigan Marching Band for a year until I realized that getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday to be in the freezing cold was more difficult than I could do. But yes, I played lots of instruments, but it was really after people asked me to do some more musical leadership that I got into the idea of conducting.
Well, why would anybody have an inkling to say, Steve Jarvi wants you to be a leader in music? How did that happen?
Well, I always had a lot of enthusiasm, and because of my training at the piano, I was really interested in arranging music for my saxophone quintet. I had a group of friends that we played for, like, you know, solo and ensemble and those kind of just very basic student events. And I realized that the saxophone repertoire didn't really have a lot of the music that I was looking for. So I arranged a bunch of music for saxophone quintet, and it was kind of a thing where, you know, we'd play at a high school assembly or at the community center or something. But then there was a huge kind of community tragedy. My band director, who was a man named Craig Flahive, his son, Scott Flahive, was a police officer and was shot and killed by an escaped convict, which, again, very small town. I didn't even realize we even had a jail, you know, and he got pulled over, and the guy shot him through the back window of this car. It was just a horrible tragedy for our community. And it ended up being a thing where our band director decided to retire. And nobody was really doing anything for him. Everybody appreciated him, and the whole community had come out for his son. But his retirement, I felt like we needed to do something. So very Mr. Holland's Opus style, well before the movie came out, I gathered up, you know, signatures and stories from all of his former alumni, and I conducted a piece at his final concert and gave a speech. And at the end of that, someone said, you know, a professional conductor came up to me and said, have you ever considered doing that for a living? You're pretty good at that. And I said, you can do that?
Oh, yeah?
I didn't even know.
It's like in the road, there's certain branches that all of a sudden you're compelled to take, and that was through serendipity. You got to do that.
As Frost said, that made all the difference.
But
the road less traveled by.
But you talk about organizing or scripting. I'll use the writing term.
Sure, arranging things.
Arranging. Thank you for that. That seems to be, you have to have like a feel for this piece and this piece, and how do you put disparate pieces together to make a harmonious sort of outcome?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, these arrangement I was making, I was just taking music that was already in the canon and making sure that saxophone players could play it. But in the process of that, I learned a lot about orchestration, like how different instruments need to work together, or how the voices need to work together, or how harmony, or all of these kind of things. And just doing that as an exercise with my high school piano teacher, Kay Wells, God rest her soul, that turned into something that I was like, boy, this is so interesting. And actually my music degree from the University of Michigan is in both music theory and conducting. I have a graduate degree from Peabody at Johns Hopkins in conducting as well. But it was really the theoretical aspect of it that brought me to things first. And also, I think the question is more about where did you come up with the love of music, right? And I've always been moved by music. When I was a little kid, I'd play a record of 1812 Overture, and I would get teary-eyed. I mean, I'm an emotional guy.
I'm with you on that one. That's
right,
great, yeah.
Right. It says there's something about these sounds that resonates with me, is what I'm thinking as a young person, and they resonated so much that I decided this is the great passion of my life.
The process of taking a symphony orchestra with 20, 30, 40 multiple different instruments and saying, I want this little piece here, and I don't follow music a lot, but I'm just amazed how one guy sits there and once in a while hits the thing, but the strings come in at certain parts, and there's parts where they stop and they start. It seems like just putting all that together, you have to have some sort of ADD to be able to do a million different things at once.
Yeah, no, it is Grand Central Station, and I was actually talking to kids in Dearborn about this, and what a conductor really does is shows when and how now is. So now is either going to be longer or softer or loud. There's all sorts of different things I'm showing. So now is either now, now, or now is now, or no. So what I'm really doing there as a conductor is trying to confirm for the musicians that they're doing the right thing. It isn't telling them to do the right thing as much as, in the rehearsal process, we all are working out our notes and everything, and I say, oh, that's an F sharp. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Let me circle that. But when it really comes down to it, I'm up there telling people yes for like 2 hours straight. Like, yes, that's what we rehearsed. Yes, remember, this is louder. Yes, this is softer. You remember from rehearsal. I remember. Okay. So all those kind of communications, it's happening in real time, and that's what's exciting about live orchestral music. You got to hear it live, because we live in a world that is so covered in visual elements and musical elements. We take for granted the fact that something as basic as they need to play together, that they need somebody to, because they have all this technology now. But as a conductor, I'm really there to affirm the already good musical behavior happening that we worked on in the rehearsal process. So a performance is like a celebration.
So I always thought that there's just one little thing that you did, but I never realized you're pointing here, there, and
Yep. And people say to me all the time, like, oh, but are people really watching the conductor? And I say, yes, when they need to. Because pretty much everybody watches at the beginning when I have to say, like, are you ready to play? Play now. But everybody has a different kind of set of problems that they need to get around. So they're about to change tempo, they're about to come up to something that's very virtuosic to play, or something that they know that they're the most important voice, and I'm handing it off to them like that. Really, I'm just trying to affirm that it's all good. Like, go ahead, my friend, now it's your turn. But they're not going to stare at me the whole time. They can collectively feel the beat and the music. They're going to look at me when they need more information or specific information.
Like, I'll look to my floor director and say, where's my cue to get out of here? But that's like kind of you telling your people, this is where you are. And I never realized there was that much two-way communication. Did you ever see people look up and say, where am I supposed to be?
There is definitely a very specific panicked look in a professional musician's eye when they don't know where they are.
Yeah.
And it very, very rarely happens. But yes, there is that, Daddy, help me, look that people get in their eyes, like I'm completely lost. But the level of musicianship that I get to deal with as a professional conductor is at the highest level, so we're much more dealing with like very high levels of things, of making things seem more transparent or smoother, or make this phrase seem, almost the abstracts about the art than the right and wrong notes. That is kind of comes with the training.
So you mentioned professional musicians, and this is something that's, again, the Dearborn Symphony Orchestra, professional musicians, is that their full-time job, or they have other full-time professional jobs?
Most of our musicians have other orchestras that they play with, because we only do 5 or 6 concerts a year, so that we don't have quite enough to support them wholeheartedly. But a lot of these people play anything from wedding gigs to substituting in the Detroit Symphony or something like that. So musicians have a really unique lifestyle because it's a little bit more kind of piecemeal. And now that we live in a gigging economy where people are driving Uber and Lyft and things like this and hustling left and right, I think that it's easier for people to understand the concept of a gig.
A gig, I got it.
And so for me, I usually have, a salaried job like I have here with the Dearborn Symphony, and then I still go around the country and do my gigs.
So let's say you go to out of state, some place for a gig, and you have a bunch of professional musicians. How much time does it take to get caught up to speed for a performance of an 1812 overture type of big symphony, huge, well-known mega thing?
Sure. Honestly, it's the best question because nobody realizes that we're really only together for like a couple days. I mean, there's our concerts here in Dearborn. We have a Sunday rehearsal with everybody, a Tuesday rehearsal with just strings, and then Wednesday, Thursday rehearsals with everybody. So three rehearsals and a string rehearsal. Some orchestras, if it's a 4th of July concert with the New York Philharmonic, I might only have to show up once for a rehearsal. And we might sit there and go through the concert for 2.5 hours, and everybody dots their I's and makes sure everything's cool, and then we just do the show because the music is so well known. Otherwise, there might be a situation where we're in rehearsal for a full week or 5, 6 rehearsals, but we always are putting this together the week of the show. I think people think that we're preparing for months and months and months, but we're actually not. We're doing this in 2, 3, 4 rehearsals, and that speaks to the level of the musicianship of our professional musicians.
The musicians show up for the practice or rehearsals. Have they learned the pieces before? I mean, there's some standard things that they learn,
Sure.
but I'm going to have this gig and I want to learn a particular piece I've never played before. How much outside work do they prep for before they get to the rehearsal with the rest of the orchestra?
All music is made available a month in advance. So usually a typical professional musician is going to drop by the office, pick up their part, go home, and kind of work that into their practice rotation. So, I expect them to be fully prepared to do this themselves at the first rehearsal. It's doing it together that's the challenge, right? So if someone just showed up and was sight reading and hadn't prepared their part at all, it would be utter chaos. So the first rehearsal is really for the musician to show up prepared, ready to nail their part, but then now they have to do it with 85 people. So it's a different kind of collective set of rules. But honestly, I don't think people realize that we rehearse as little as we do. And it's a
Are we giving away secrets now?
I mean, this is the dirty little secret is that National Symphony concert that you see on the mall at Washington, D.C. that they do for 4th of July that we all watch or something. Or the Boston Pops or whatever. They had one rehearsal. They're just that good. And that repertoire is something that they know. They know those pieces. They've played 1812 1,000 times. They've played Stars and Stripes Forever 1,000 times. And it's really just about organizing that situation. Now, on a more challenging piece, they might show up the first day just hoping that it all works out.
Right.
And we have 4 or 5 rehearsals on music that they've never played before, and there's a different energy in the room for that. And, that's part of why we continue to play different pieces, because not only is new music, first of all, it's beautiful and exciting, and we're in the greatest renaissance of American music in history, but that kind of virtuosic playing that puts demands beyond Beethoven and beyond Mozart on our fingers and such, is what keeps us sharp. So I think a lot of musicians love the idea of, ooh, I've never played this piece before.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, like 1812, they're like, ba 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 bum, bum. I got it. I played this 1,000 times. But if it's something that was written 5 years ago,
and no one's heard
and
it
the
before.
composer's alive and he's in the room,
Yep.
it's a completely different dynamic. So we're very lucky to be in a place in the 21st century in America that American music is in a great place, and the playing is at such a high level that we can put on these great concerts in like 3 rehearsals.
Sounds great. We've learned a secret about music. We're going to learn a secret about Kiwanis. We're going to take a break here for a second. Don't go away. Coming back with Stephen Jarvi, musical director for the Dearborn Symphony. We'll get into the Dearborn Symphony a little bit more too when we come back. Don't go away.
Who is a kid? Well, that's a kid. And another. Look, a gaggle of them. Or is it a herd? Litter? Pride. But what about her? Tell her she's not a kid. Or him. So how do we tell who is a kid? Height? Age, maybe. But some of us have to grow up faster than others. A kid. A kid. A kid wants to make the world better. And one day, he just might. Is a kid fearless? Vulnerable? Strong? Nervous? Yes. 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 Kiwanis is 600,000 kids at heart doing all the little and big things it takes to help children around the world. Because kids need Kiwanis. All of them.
Welcome back to KiwaniTalk. I'm your host, Gary Gardner. In this episode, talking musical things way beyond my pay grade with Stephen Jarvi, musical director for the Dearborn Symphony Orchestra. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much.
I've learned so much already here, and I really, it's kind of cool because I never thought some of the things I just picked up on this. So, Dearborn Symphony Orchestra, where do they play?
We play at the Ford Community and Performing Arts Center, which has the Michael Guido Theater there is just extraordinary. It's 1,200 seats, which is sort of like the Goldilocks in the modern era. As musicians, we love things to feel full, but we also like them to feel big, both for acoustics and for that visual sensation. So it's a beautiful hall. I think it was opened 2001, and it feels like it's brand new. So it's a great organization. We also rehearse at Henry Ford Community College sometimes when we're off-site.
So you've traveled around the country, around the world. How about the acoustics in the facility we have here in Dearborn?
It really is spectacular. I mean, again, when the first time I ever came here, I was a music director candidate, but I didn't really know much about Dearborn Symphony, and I knew that a little bit about the community, but I didn't really know what their history was. And all of a sudden, I step into this like gorgeous 21st century concert hall that is tip top of anything that I would stand in. And that was actually the first thing that really woke me up. Like, oh, these people are doing it right.
Okay.
So I had to,
button your shirt and
yeah,
make sure your tie was straight.
Yeah, I got to make sure everything's set if I'm going to be in that fancy theater. The thing that makes good acoustics is good sound for the audience, but also good sound for us on stage. We have to hear each other. And sometimes, like we're here in a studio that's very specifically supposed to suck up sound, so we don't hear all the echoes and things on television. We want a little bit of that echo. And can you imagine playing your instrument and feeling like there's nobody around you at all because you're just in this kind of like musically naked place acoustically. So it's nice that we can hear each other. The audience can hear us really beautifully, and the level of the musicians is very high, and it's fun because I get to drive to work instead of fly, because I live down the street in Ann Arbor.
There you go. So you've come to Dearborn. You've got the Dearborn Symphony Orchestra. We've got some good facilities. Musicians are top-notch. Everything else. Sounds like a little piece of heaven for you, Steve.
Yeah, it is. It really is fun, and I'm learning so much about the Dearborn community because it's such a specifically unique part of the country, both with all the different ethnic heritage that are here. I mean, that's a super interesting dynamic for me personally. We're definitely trying to find some more Arab American soloists and things like that to communicate with that part of the community. But also, my grandfather worked for GM. I know I'm supposed to say Ford because this is that town.
Well, you already said U of M too, which is a problem for me and Skip here.
Oh yeah. Now we're going to get into an arm wrestling about the football. But my grandfather had a very traditional Michigan upbringing where he was working on the line after the war, and then he worked for GM all the way up into upper middle management, and they got that little house up north and all the things. And now that I'm older, that I'm not running around the country doing concerts as my top priority, but as a father is kind of my top priority right now.
Right.
It's fun to be back here in the state of Michigan, which is really my true home, and to have my parents across the state in Grand Haven instead of several flights away, and to be able to bring music to the state of Michigan and to my own community is just so special.
Getting back to the musical part, you have enthusiasm, like exuberance, and does that exuberance from the director reflect back to you from the orchestra?
Yes, and it's actually a very emotional thing, because I'm very vulnerable up there. I have to be wide open to these people, to reveal what I truly feel about this music. If I want them to be, actually that's part of what makes a conductor important. People say, "Why, you don't even make any sound. Do they really need you?" You know, they could play it without, they could. A lot of things they could play without me. But not only do we love the idea of a hero in America, but if we see somebody up there, if 85 people see someone up there leading the way, not even making any sound, being completely vulnerable and completely in the music, then they feel more permission. They feel more comfortable opening up, right? So like you being a good interviewer makes me want to reveal more to you. And so if I can be an enthusiastic, I mean, sometimes I'm practically a clown up there because I have to give so much joy and energy or so much tragedy, and I'm up there crying sometimes because it just means so much to me. But I don't think it could mean as much to both the players or the audience if they didn't have me as sort of an emotional conduit.
Again, all of the way however the signs that you use, sometimes it's very slow and sometimes it's very, frenetic. How excited do you get when you're doing something and you got a point here, there, and everywhere?
Well, there's definitely been several players that have asked about my heart health, just to make sure that I'm going to be okay, because they see me getting so excited, and I'm definitely up at 180 something RPM some of those times. But it's really beautiful when you have a moment where you just make a brief contact with somebody. It doesn't even always have to be eye contact. Music is so interesting that way. We almost kind of have a third eye. But when you make contact with somebody and they're kind of saying, "Yes, we're doing it." That is so special. Or when they know that I need support. I just did a concert in Florida where I had just given some emotional speech about my family or something, and the players were all looking at me like, "Yes, we're here. We're doing this together. We're here." And so that collective, that's what people are paying for. People aren't paying for ba-ba-ba-ba. They're hearing, people want to hear humans go, dun-dun-dun-dun. It's not just pushing a tape. It's human beings up there pouring their soul out for you for like 45 minutes, and then they stop and they do it again.
I have an old girlfriend that I had, and she was in a marching band, and she said, it was so crazy because it's like chaos, but we're all working together. And when we get it together, it's a very special feeling. Talk about that for a second. When you nailed it, how does that make you and the members feel?
That kind of synchronicity that you're talking about when things click, I mean, that's what I'm personally really in for now. I love music and all that, but I'm really into the idea of we're all here in the room and something special is happening. And how do we, like, as an entertainer, I need to control that. Like, how can I make that experience happen in an authentic way? And it really does come from, you know, good hard work in the preparation with the musicians so they feel comfortable enough to give it their all. But there is something magic. There's something magical about being in the room where it happens, and all of a sudden you think to yourself, wow, that was beautiful.
Are there high fives afterwards?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of congratulations, a lot of relief. Surprisingly, a large amount of on to the next gig because we all have so much music to do. I think the strangest thing about being a professional conductor is actually my time in the car afterwards. I honestly think one of the reasons that musicians want to go out to the bar and hang out afterwards is because we're on such an adrenaline high after those concerts, whether we're trying to act coy about it or not. We are high on life, and it takes a little bit to come down. So it always gets me if I've had a really great concert where I can tell the audience was with me, and there's tears. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a sad song to get tears, you know? And I go back to my dressing room, I have a little cry into a towel because it's so hard to receive 2,000 people giving you that much energy without it becoming emotional. And then I'm just sitting there thinking like, all right, well now I gotta go home. And you're sitting there in silence in the car, it's so strange.
Wow. Speaking of going home, we've got about a minute left.
Perfect.
We have Dearborn Symphony concerts coming up. What's the next one coming up this spring coming up for us?
Up in spring we have our April Pops concert with Rich Ridenauer, who is a huge staple in this community. He's our very own kind of Victor Borge kind of character, a pianist with a lot of personality. And that concert is happening on April 3rd at 8 o'clock, which is a Friday. All our concerts are Friday at 8 o'clock. And then we have our season finale concert, which is called Fairy Tales and Friends. And that is May 8th, also 8 o'clock. And that concert is music by Maurice Ravel from his Mother Goose Suite, so music that was influenced by stories. And then Edward Elgar's Enigma Variations, which is all influenced by his friends. It's a theme and variation where every variation is a different friend.
Stephen Jarvi, I want to thank you because next time I go to a concert, and hopefully sooner than it's been in the past, I will look for the interaction, for the emotion, for the, you got it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so
very
much
for coming on the program.
Great.
Thank you for watching KiwaniTalk. I'm Gary Gardner. See you next time. Bye-bye.